Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we have an intro jingle. Okay. So, welcome to the AmpliPhi Ask Us Anything. I guess that's AUA. We'll have to change that for next time. The Ask Us Anything show number 1. What we're going to do on the show is cover what we hear from our clients, most commonly in meetings that we have, whether it's prospect meetings, whether it's client meetings, or then we go out and give speeches, like Helen's about to do pretty soon. Then we can share with you via this live video what it is that you can take away and use in your own business. So please introduce yourselves to the audience.
Hello, I am Helen. I work with clients here at AmpliPhi.
I'm Erin, and I do the same thing.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Welcome. Do you
Welcome.
need Spence introduction?
I'm Spence. I try to do a lot of this stuff and then make it easy and share it, typically. And yeah, that's it. So.
Yeah. We think it's a good idea for us to be able to give some content to people. So now we are on this show called AmpliPhi.
Yeah.
Ask Us Anything.
So what we're going to do with this specific show is we're going to talk about the different kinds of digital ads, and if we just boil them down into 2 groups. The first would be what we call programmatic ads, sometimes called algorithmic ads. In other words, stuff that gets placed on your behalf, versus specific placements, where you actually go out and you use a self-service based system to put ads where you want them to be, like Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, Twitter, that kind of stuff. So you two, what's your impression or your understanding of programmatic or algorithmic advertising and how it works?
Well, personally, coming from a radio background, there was a lot of digital ads that they would call them. And it's basically just ads that would run as right column ads on websites that, people might go to, or top banner ads that people might go to on sites. So that's my understanding of programmatic ads. And then as far as the other type of ad, we're talking social ads. We're talking specific pages that you have that you can run ads on, and target audiences.
So Helen comes at it from the standpoint of working at a radio station, where the radio station said we used to sell space on inventory that we had, like they'd be running a show and they do 15 or 30-second bits or spots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, well, we should probably do this in the digital realm as well. So what kind of stuff were they monetizing? Like what properties does a radio station have that they can monetize with ads?
Like any of their websites. So specifically the stations that I worked for, one of them was heavy news focused, news and sports. So, they had, a lot of visitors to the site on the daily. So why not monetize that site by running ads on the, all over it to kind of make some money? There is a certain amount of air space that you can sell. So, but there's really an unlimited amount of website space that you can sell there. And then they were also able to sell space on any of their other sites within the family. So the family of stations, I say.
So talk a little bit more about that. Like what is a family of stations, like if we think in terms of a radio broadcast network, where they have, these AM stations, they have FM stations, and that's what they have as far as inventory goes. But do they ever go outside of that and start to look at other sites also?
Yeah.
Okay, how does that work?
That's a great question. I don't know exactly how it works on the back end, but I'm sure the digital team just had the ability to sell within, I'm sure that there was some type of service that they sold into where they could sell on the other sites that was made available to them, whether they purchased that or they just had access to buying ads through that site. But yeah, they were able to kind of spread the wealth, beyond just the sites that the stations owned.
So could I go to a radio station and say, I'd only like to buy digital ads on this one property, like this one website, or do you do it throughout and then they tell you after the fact what happened?
Well, I know for a fact that you could just buy ads on one site that they owned.
Okay.
You could,
Okay. Cool.
There was different prices, for all that stuff. Sometimes they would, it was kind of crazy because sometimes ad campaigns spot campaigns where you would sell actual radio commercials, sometimes they would and this is back in the day, this is, like 10 years ago, so they would sell digital ads as like added value. It's like, okay, you buy this $100,000 worth of radio advertising and we'll just give you the digital banner ads for free, so and they just kind of said, it's just a perk of making this big radio buy, but yeah, it was interesting.
Now I feel like they do the opposite.
Yeah.
Like at a newspaper, you want to buy all the digital ads, and they're like, well, we'll give you this, and we'll throw in a quarter-page ad
Right.
on a Tuesday.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up, Aaron, because it seems like it's safe still to buy physical space, right? Like if somebody can open a magazine, they go, there's our ad. That makes them feel good. Same thing with the billboard. Same thing if they're driving during drive time, they hear the radio commercial because they go, oh, that's us, right?
Yeah.
So why do you think that happened as far as people shifting to digital and saying as an add-on, you get the other more traditional stuff?
At my old job specifically, it's because we can track what's happening. So we can see the clicks, we can see the views, we can see the engagement versus you have no idea if someone is actually flipping open to your physical ad or not. So while it may make you feel good that you can see it, you have no idea what's happening to it once it goes out.
So this idea of ROI on marketing or demonstrating that if you're buying ads that something has to happen, that's been a huge shift, right? Because what we used to do is say, well, we know that this billboard gets X amount of cars per day, so X amount of people or Y amount of people will have seen it, right? But it shifted away a lot. And it seems, at least in my estimation, that a lot has gone more like off the edge as far as we need numbers to the nth degree. And we need to know numbers on everything, when it's really tough from an attribution standpoint to say that numbers equal something. Because having been a sales guy for a long time, you never know, if you look back, even if your records are really good and somebody becomes a client, you never know if after visit 7 or phone call 4 or that handwritten note or showing up at that networking event or what really pushed them over the edge mentally to do business with you before they decided to sign on that line which is dotted, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the difference then between that kind of placement where somebody does it on your behalf and what we see from a self-service standpoint, or certainly what we do on a daily basis when it comes to placing client ads.
Well, I think the biggest difference is when we're placing client ads, we're placing them like through their own ad account on platforms that they use specifically, so we can use, like if they have a Facebook page, we can use their business page, connect it to the ads manager account, and then we can run ads specifically to audiences that they want to target, So, just the personalization aspect, I think, is leaps and bounds beyond the just standard digital ad or programmatic or algorithmic or whatever we're calling them these days. So,
well, Aaron, talk a little bit about that specifically. Like if you're placing ads on a certain network like Facebook and you want to have a specific outcome happen, how do you know what to put on which platform?
I think it depends largely on the audience you're going after. We've been using LinkedIn a lot recently to target certain businesses, certain business owners, certain level of employee within certain companies versus Facebook might be more where you're trying to sell something for e-commerce in a very basic, broad sense, I guess.
So e-commerce, by that you mean specifically you show somebody something with hopes that they take some kind of action, right?
Yeah.
And I guess we used to call that direct response advertising, like when I used to read Boys Life magazine when I was in the Cub Scouts, and you go to the back, you'd have the classified ads and it'd say, cut this out, send it in, you get this, or call this number and you get this. So that's old school direct response. New school is, you go to Facebook and you see that thing, like you didn't sign up for a marathon, the marathon goes, hey, don't you want to sign up for this thing? You go, yeah, I guess I do. And then you can actually measure dollars in for dollars out, right? But you hit on what I think is important is a lot of people don't realize that within LinkedIn, I think you were talking about, where if we say we want to go from unknown to known at a company, we as an organization, we can ensure that those people at that company see our ads, right? So how do we go about doing that?
I think the first step is to think about the people that you want to see your ad within a company, and then think about what you're trying to ask of them and what you want to say to them. So for instance, if we just want the C-suite at a company to know about us, we can show that C-suite just some type of brand awareness, and we can ask them to go to a website and fill out a contact form or download some sort of asset that might be of use to them. And that way, if we want to approach them for some sort of a meeting later on, they likely will have heard of us from all of the creepy ads that have been following them around.
Well, and I think it's important to note too that if the company is small enough, if the company is large enough, you might be able to target just that specific company and the C-suite of employees there. But if it's not, you're going to have to create a list of maybe at least a dozen, 24 companies that you want to target this C-suite level, because you have to have there's a minimum amount of people that you have to have in that audience, at least 300 people to be able to actually run ads to. So keep that in mind too. You can't just say okay, I'm going to target this person.
Smith at AmpliPhi.
Yeah, I'm going to target Spence at AmpliPhi. Want him to buy my stuff, or whatever it might be. So kind of keep that big picture in mind too.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the mechanics of that then. So you were talking about this thing that we call account selling, right? And the account selling, you identify those you want to sell to, but talk a little bit more about how that would actually work. If somebody were to go, how do we get salespeople, right? So you're usually the ones out doing the business development activities. How do we get them to give us that stuff? How do we pitch that to them?
Well, usually a company knows who they want to sell to or who they can sell to. So if a company knows that they are looking for maybe businesses with less than 200 employees, and they want to offer them some type of service that they have, then you create a list of people that you might want to target. Create a list of companies that you might want to target, and then once you give that list to marketing, and then marketing might say, okay, they give that list to us and say, all right, here's a list of companies that our sales team is trying to get in front of. So then we will look at the list. We will input the list into LinkedIn to see how many people would be in that audience if they wanted to run ads to, and then we'll talk creative. We'll see what do we want to show that audience of people from the company to make them stand out in front of those people. So it's kind of what's best to show them. As you've said numerous times, it's awesome to go into a meeting when the people that you're going to see already know who you are, or at least know the company that you represent. So, that's the basics.
Yeah.
So
I think it might be interesting to explain. So I think we've talked a lot now about the benefits to more detailed targeting and social ads. So why are people still using the programmatic ads?
What do you think?
Because it's easy and they don't know how to do social ads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like a lot of times marketing people are so bogged down with so many different things that, when the boss of the company sees that you're running an ad or goes to ESPN.com and sees your ad on the sidebar, they think, whoa, they're doing something right, we're running ads on ESPN.com, just a little naive to actually how that works. But yeah, whether or not that ad on ESPN.com does anything besides, probably some branding is another thing to think about. So, but yeah, it's definitely simple.
Yeah.
You can just reach out to someone and say, I want to start a programmatic campaign here. So the social ads take a little bit of work and a little bit more creative design help and whatnot there.
So is there space for both then?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important to understand because, oftentimes if we start from zero and we go, well, if we had, our druthers and start from a blank slate, we would do exactly these things because this is what we've seen actually works the best. But it's really difficult to be part of an organization and say all that stuff that we used to do, we're not going to do that anymore. Because somebody has to own that decision, right? And if you're the one who owns that decision and things don't work right, where you get too good with your targeting, which is something I've actually done, let me tell you this real quick, is that we were running LinkedIn ads very early for this organization that got video content abilities on their company page very, very early on in the LinkedIn ad universe. And I specifically excluded, this is a big company, I specifically excluded them from seeing the ads. And the marketing people were coming to me and saying, look, the people that I report to, they see this digital ad spend on LinkedIn, but they're not seeing our stuff. I go, that's the idea, right? Like, we don't want to advertise to our employees. They go, no, we need them to see it. So it's really important. I'm not sure, I'm still trying to figure out a good term for this. Sometimes they call it internal marketing, or there's something like that where you go, look, we're doing these placements on your behalf and you're going to see them. So like what Helen had said, going out to ESPN.com, opening a magazine, it reinforces the fact that, oh, there's where our money's going. Because otherwise, if you get chewed down into the zeros and ones and nobody sees your stuff because it gets so specific to those people who only can buy from you, then it gets lost in that shuffle. So I feel like programmatic still has a big space because if you go, we'd like to dominate banner ads around this area during this convention and we want people on their phones who are playing Words with Friends or whatever to see our stuff, there's a lot to say for the validity of that, right? It's still really inexpensive. I think a lot of the clicks, I'm going to caution you though on this, is that a lot of those clicks are erroneous. Yeah. Because if I'm playing a game on my phone, right, and a little pop-up ad comes out and I try to hit that X to get rid of it so I can see what's going on, I accidentally go through the ad and then they go, oh, that's a click, right? So oftentimes when we audit client accounts, we'll see a lot of placements on games, like a lot of placements on games. And we have to go through and individually exclude those games one by one to say we don't want any mobile game ads running because we could put that under branding, but I feel like there's probably a lot better place to run those ads.
Yeah. Yeah, because if I'm playing a game on my computer, the last thing I want to see is an ad.
I'll pay the 99 cents to.
No,
never.
That's what have we not touched on so far?
I always tell Spence, you keep forgetting when you're doing your LinkedIn Lives to tell people in the middle of it, like, hey, you can ask me a question anytime. Instead at the end, you ask, so.
Yeah, that's true.
And now we just kind of did it. I'm just as guilty.
What do you guys think would be a good place for people to start if they're right now just doing programmatic ads? What would be a good way to dip your toe into the social ad pool?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question.
Calling AmpliPhi.
There you go.
Yep.
So,
no, go ahead.
No, I can tell you, looking at the data, Google still dominates the digital ad universe. I think because people have grown accustomed to going to Google and looking for something like their company name, firm name, organization, best pizza place in whatever it might be. And people know that there's very much a pay-to-play part of it, that if you want to show up, you have to buy the ad. And Google has done a really good job of Google is so smart. They go, in order to get on Google My Business, we have to send you a postcard, a physical postcard. So then they validate that you have an address and they start to build up a relationship with you. So you start to get inbound postcards that say, hey, here's a $150 Google ad spend credit. All you have to do is call us. Because Google knows it's not a good self-service platform. Like if you are a novice and you try to go into Google Ads, it's a nightmare. So they get you on the horn, they go, what do you want to do? What's your budget? We'll run ads for you. And you go like, all right, cool, that's neat. Facebook is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So we're now big enough that we have a Facebook dedicated ads person in Phoenix, Arizona. So when we call her, she'll tell us stuff, right? But Facebook has always been, here's a big blue button that says boost post. You hit it and it just goes out to people who like your page and their friends. You're like, oh, that was easy, right? So I know I'm out there. So to answer your question, I guess I would start with understanding who the clients are and then understanding the difficulty of trying to do this. So if you want to do Google, maybe start with Google itself because they'll help you. Facebook, you can start by boosting posts and see what happens. LinkedIn is not at all easy because you have a company page, you can only advertise with a company page, and then you have an ad account, which an ad account is mutually exclusive from a company page, and then you have to go through and actually try to pick exactly who you want to target to because there's not really a boost post button. So that's where LinkedIn, I think, is still struggling to effectively monetize their platform because people don't know how to advertise on it yet. But if I'm doing B2B, I'm going all in on LinkedIn right now because their ad inventory is still really low priced compared to other places.
I mean, relative to who you're actually targeting.
Yep.
Because LinkedIn is still, it's a high cost per click, usually, that you're getting back. But to be able to target that specific of a person is a major deal. And I mean, from my experience personally, I find LinkedIn to be incredibly user-friendly once you actually get into using, Campaign Manager. Like once you're actually set up, it goes through step by step what you need to do, so, and I feel like Facebook is a little bit more, it's more difficult to actually set up your campaign if you're doing it through the ads manager. Sure, push the boost button and it's like 1, 2, 3 and you're done, which is a great place to start. I would highly recommend that's where businesses start. Start here. If you're not getting the results you want, look into doing it through the ads manager, talking to us. We can ask, we can answer questions for you. But I truly think that LinkedIn is one of the easier platforms once you actually get in. I also think Twitter is super simple.
Yeah,
Twitter is a very, very easy promote your tweet platform.
Yeah, so talk about what we've seen with Twitter as far as stuff that we can capitalize on. Right?
Yeah,
'Cause Twitter, go ahead. Yeah.
I live in Twitter, when it comes to sports, or if there's something big going on, I don't know, I'm kind of a sucker for award shows, so I'll live on Twitter because stuff happens as it goes, it's not
It's like you have a bunch of friends you can talk to.
Yes,
about
right.
What's on the TV.
Hashtag searching is super easy on Twitter too, so, but yeah, let's say I wanted to, kind of become a de facto person who is sponsoring something. Let's say the Grammys are on, which is coming up, once the Grammys are on, you can follow a bunch of Grammy stuff, but if you start putting in hashtags with Grammys, you'll kind of pop up in those feeds. You can also run promoted tweets, not necessarily showing up as, or showing up in the direct Grammys feed or anything, but you can kind of show up as if you're going to run some creative behind what the Grammys look like. It kind of looks like you are somebody who is sponsoring that event, so to speak. So, I mean, it's just, I think it's really simple. It's easy to target people on Twitter. I mean, it can be a little complicated when you're talking about either mentions or hashtags or lookalikes as the audience on Twitter, but it's pretty simple, So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, and I think to add a little color too, I was talking to our Twitter person last week, and he said Twitter positions itself as a brand safe platform, meaning if you say we only want to show up as people are having conversations about the UW men's basketball team, you'll only show up there with that ad. So you're not going to have these weird conflicting, showing up in University of Illinois basketball ads feeds, and people are like, why would you advertise to us, right?
Yeah.
And with programmatic stuff, they can get a little bit more lost because it's fuzzy, because there's not a lot of context there. But I think Twitter does a really good job of saying, here's the context in which you want to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And another thing is that they're really, really, really inexpensive. So American Family is running this great ad right now on Twitter with J.J. Watt that you've probably seen on TV if you watch any football at all, where he's on a boat and he goes out and sees these people who are picking garbage out of it. It's had, last I saw, 460,000 views on Twitter. And when we're getting video views on Twitter, it's always less than a penny per view. So that's really easy to reconcile with that. And especially with the CEO, Jack Salzwedel, who's really big on Twitter, that very much reinforces where they're trying to make a splash on social, is American Family wants to be part of those conversations, especially when it comes to sports.
Smart.
Yeah. Repositioning.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about how much a television commercial costs compared to something on social, I ain't gonna lie. If I am watching a television show live, which happens rarely, but when I do, I'm getting up during those commercials to go do something else.
Or if you're not watching it live, you're fast forwarding.
Exactly.
Commercials.
Yeah.
Or you're like streaming it where there is no commercials because you've paid to be commercial free. But when you're on social, like I'm not gonna walk away from my phone while there's like a commercial right there. Like, no, like you don't. That's why I also think like radio right now is not the dumbest. That is, it may be a marketing tactic that is older, more traditional, but nobody gets out of their car when the commercials are on. Like, it's not a bad place to be. But, yeah. No one's still asking us questions. It looks like there are
We've
some...
given them all the information.
It looks like there are people watching, but no one's
people are
asking
watching.
questions.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments if you have any questions.
Yeah.
We'd be happy to answer them for you with the panel of pros here and as well as Spence. Happy to help.
Yeah, so... What else? What else?
Well, I can tell you something that's interesting that we're running right now, and I won't talk about this client specifically, but they have a big meeting, and it's actually today with a very large organization. They're a startup that has some money, so they've had some venture backing, and because they have this big meeting today with this big company, we've been running a LinkedIn campaign targeting the very important people at this company before they go in and see them. And we've been reporting to these folks that are going to be part of this meeting that these folks are seeing you. So, make it known to you and your sales team before they walk in the room that there's going to be something that happens that those people most likely have seen, so you can walk in feeling confident. You had mentioned that before, but what's neat about it is we were super specific with the targeting, super specific with the timing to say this is only going to happen during this run, and it's cost, as of last count, $19.31. And I mean, confidence is so important in that situation, and if we know that it's only these people, and LinkedIn is now telling us specifically it is these people, that's a really good place to be. And it does, like you said though, it's like a lot of heavy lifting, because you need a piece of creative, you need to write the copy, you need to do the placements, there's a lot of manual stuff, but if you can reinforce what sales is trying to accomplish, I mean, to me that's invaluable,
Right.
if that's the case. What I used to run into in the 401k days, I used to work for a company called The Hartford, which has been around since 1810, and does a ton of advertising. They have the Elk, right? When I go into meetings, people go, now are you Hartford or are you John Hancock? And we go, what? Like, we're spending huge dollar amounts to say we're this and they're that, and they still can't distinguish between us. But the Hartford used to be the key sponsor of the NCAA tournament every year. So I'd walk in March and they go, oh, you're the basketball guys, right? And then the tournament would be over and they go, like, which one are you again? So I think it's really important to think in terms of not just branding, but really specific niche branding around that thing that you want to align yourself with.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true.
Cool.
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 Mike, anything from behind the camera?
Mm-mm.
No?
On the next episode of
Yeah.
Yeah.
AmpliPhi
I
AUAs.
think it's going to be a UA.
Somebody's going to ask us something next
Yeah.
time.
All right, well, thanks for tuning in. Let us know in the comments if you found this valuable, and just as importantly, let us know in the comments what questions you'd like to have us answer for you next time,
Yeah.
because we're just going to get back to work and do what we do and probably figure some stuff out that we can share with you then. So, on behalf of Helen and Aaron and Mike, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.